Hello, everyone. My name is Bruce Perkins. I'm with the Simcoe South Waterpack Karate Club, and I started my karate in Wawa back in 1974. And I just got back from celebrating their 50th anniversary of karate in that area. My journey began with Sensei's Rick Levier, Luigi Trovarello, and Sensei Danny McCoy. I was very fortunate enough to have experienced a lot of well, they call it bush karate, but a lot of different approaches to karate. It helped mold me and make me into who I am today, which right, wrong, or indifferent, I guess, is what you got. Um, it was trying. I left Wawa as a brown belt. I come back to Simcoe. I moved in '79, and I got my shodan there with Sensei Shintani. But going back to the Wawa days, we were a tough fighting club. There's a lot of full contact, a lot of things back then. And we were doing MMA before MMA was doing MMA. But anyway, it helped form us into who we were and the characters we were. And from there, things just evolved. And I moved down south, and I was fortunate enough to spend time with Sensei and traveled with him a few times. I was very lucky to have some one-on-one time with him. And I was fortunate enough to be picked as one of the original Senate members, and have been active on that ever since. One of the things that, if you mention Sensei, to me, there's a few things that first come to mind. The very first thing that I have to mention was his love for his mother. And today being Mother's Day, how appropriate is that? But it was anybody that knew Sensei knew how much he cared for his mother and how much she had influenced his life. And he always spoke so highly of her. And he spoke of Otsuka Sensei and his mother usually in the same sentence. So that's one of the first things that people should know, is how caring he was for her. The second part is what an honorable man he was. He was very soft, but when it came to things dealing with honor and specific issues, he could have a very hard side to him. He was no nonsense type of guy, but he wanted everybody to be treated with respect. He wanted everybody to be treated the same. He wanted everybody treated equally across the board. Man, woman, handicapped, disadvantaged, it didn't matter. He wanted them treated fair, and he made sure they got treated fair. One example of that was after a tournament in Fort Erie. We had a black belt workout in the Japanese Cultural Center. And since he sat us all down, and the gym was full, and he sat us all down, and he was walking around, and he was talking about the tournament that he had just came from in Fort Erie the week before. And he said, that's back in the day when we used to have the 5 judges lined up across the front. And he made a comment that one of the people performing their katas was up there doing their katas. And he says 3 of the judges were talking. They were looking at each other. They weren't even watching the person doing the kata. And at the end, he said they gave him a score. They gave the individual a score. And Sensei's approach on that was, first of all, he said how dishonest they were, because how could you put up a score for something you didn't even watch? And the other part of that was the disrespect they were showing for that person that was doing the kata. And he made reference to how hard they must have worked to get to the point where they could perform their kata, and how many hours of practice and everything else that it took. And he made a comment. He says, I don't have any room in my organization for people like that. He says, I don't want them in my organization. And as he was walking toward the front of the class, he stopped and he turned around, he looked at us, he said, and just in case anybody's interested, he said, that person performing their kata was handicapped. And you could have heard a pin drop in that gym. And it was one of those moments where you realize like how much he watched and observed and cared for each and every individual that was in his organization and on the floor. another one. This is a personal teaching lesson. He's actually a couple at the black belt tournament in Fort Erie we had. I was standing there, and I just won the kumite part of it, and doing the kata. And Sensei walked up to me and he says, "Are you doing kata today, Bruce?" I said, "No." He said, "Why not?" I said, "I hate kata, Sensei." He goes, "Oh, okay." And he looked at me. He says, "What are you going to do when you're 50, Bruce? Tell people you used to be a good fighter?" And he walked away. It was one of those moments where I got hit right between the eyes, and guess who started practicing kata the next class? Another time I was traveling with them, we were going out west, and we're on a plane, and I had my little notebook, and I had everything broken down into, I didn't know if I was going to have to teach or what, but I had everything broken down into 2 and 3 minute sections. I was going to do this for 5 minutes, this for 3 minutes, yada, yada, yada. And Sensei sitting beside me, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "It's just my notes, and if I have to teach." And I said, "Don't you take notes?" He goes, "Don't be silly, Bruce." He said, "At your rank," he said, "you should be able to run them through Pinan Shodan and get enough information out of there to run an 8-hour clinic." So I just closed up my notebook, and I never opened it since. So, and that taught me a very valuable lesson on teaching. I find if you teach from a notebook, you're teaching from yourself, for yourself. If you watch and observe a class and you decide what that class needs, if you can analyze what they're doing and what they're lacking, okay, now you're teaching for the group rather than teaching for yourself. And that was another very, very subtle but valuable lesson that he taught me. There's one other one that I know I've told a few people this story. It's about a grading that took place. We were out west again, and there was a gentleman there that was really, really struggling. And the group that were watching him, they were borderline whether they were going to pass this gentleman or not. Anyway, Sensei said to us, he said, "Does he have heart?" And we said, "Oh yeah, he's got heart, Sensei." He said, "Well, if he's got heart, you got something to work with." He said, "If he doesn't have heart," he said, "you got nothing to work with." He said, "But if he's got heart," he says, "you've still got something there." So we passed him. So a year or two later, I was out west, and I was a senior member on the floor, and we were having a grading, and the exact same scenario came up. There was a gentleman there who was struggling. And anyway, we watched him, and so the group that was watching him, I said, at halftime, they said, "You know, this guy's really, really struggling." So I told them the story about what Sensei had told me a couple of years prior to that. And anyway, he was successful. He got his rank in Shodan. That night at the banquet, this gentleman stood up and he said, "In the last year, I lost my job, I lost my wife, I lost my house, I lost my kids." And he held up a certificate. He said, "Karate saved my life." And I never forgot that. So anyway, that's just a message out there of the lessons that Sensei taught me, and the compassion he liked to show people, and how much he cared for each and every individual. Sometimes things aren't cut and dried. I guess for strictly ability, should these gentlemen have moved on? I don't know. But because of the character they showed, and to me, it was the right thing to do. And anyway, I just wanted to pass that information on. So I was very honored to have honored and lucky to have known Sensei, to have experienced some one-on-one travel time with Sensei. And one of the things I eulogized my dad and my dad's celebration of life. And one of the comments I made there was 2 people that I respected in my life, and one was my dad, and one was Sensei Shintani. And one of my friends came up to me after and asked me, he said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah, sure." He said, "What made your dad and Mr. Shintani so special that these are the two people you respected in your life. And I said, you know, I said, no matter what the situation, you could always depend on them doing the right thing. No matter what, whether it was opening a door for somebody, whether it was finding something that didn't belong to them, whether it was treating somebody with respect and compassion, you could always depend that they were going to do the right thing. And that stuck with me, and I still believe that to this day, that regardless of the situation. And I know there's sometimes since he had to do things that he didn't necessarily wasn't in the best interest of everybody, uh, but he always did the right thing. An example of that, we were at a meeting in Hamilton, and it was a disciplinary meeting, and since he asked me to attend, and both sides stated their case, and since he said, okay, after he heard, he said, I'll get back to you. So after they left, we talked about the case. And I said to Sensi then, I said, Sensi, I said, when we were done, I said, is it possible? I said, I got some questions I want to ask you about the Shindo program. He goes, no, Bruce. He said, it can't be perceived that we're having a meeting after the meeting. He said, if those guys, somebody those out there's watching and they know we're having a meeting after a meeting, it's going to be an automatic assumption that we're talking about them. He said, that's not right. So I left there and I had to go back to Hamilton 2 days later to have that meeting with him. But it was an inconvenience for me. But at the same time, I fully understood exactly what he was talking about of how it would have been viewed if somebody was watching that was a part of that meeting, that, you know, we were sitting around having another meeting after and talking about them. So I get that. And that's just another example of how Sensi held himself to higher standards. So, and again, I want to reiterate how lucky I was and how happy I am with the journey I've had with the SWKKF and especially with Sensi Shintani and his guidance. It's helped shape me into the person that I am, and helped me a lot in life. Thank you very much.